Welcome to Can I Speak to Your Product Manager, the nitty gritty with your favorite PMs. I'm Kyle Kolich, VP of Product at Zora.
And I'm Lucas Weber, Director of Product Management at Zora. On today's episode, we have Dave Lankford, former VP of Product of Advanced Innovation at Disney Streaming. And we're going to start off the show, as usual, getting to know our guests through a little game of Ship It or Skip It.
What do you want to do?
Let's do it.
No.
No. Maybe. Yes.
That's right, Lucas. This is a game that we like to play with our product managers. It's a very easy game. I'm going to give you 3 examples, some ideas, some product ideas, and then you come up with, do you want to ship it, bring it to market, sell it to customers, or you want to skip it? Let it maybe go back to R&D or maybe bury it and never see the light of day. You ready?
I'm ready.
All right. So look at your background. We talked a little bit about Disney. I've been a fan of Disney. I've seen a lot of products Disney has come up with, and having children, I've bought a lot of those products. One product I had to think about it a little bit more, but it was called Disney Smiles, braces that are Disney themed. Disney has helped the world smile for a generation. So now let Disney braces help with your magical new smile. Would you ship it or would you skip it?
It's funny. I think my niece actually had this, like little Mickeys on her braces brackets. I would definitely ship it. Now, look, there are a lot of interesting applications of Disney IP. But I think, people should be excited about their smiles. They shouldn't be ashamed of having braces. I think anything that shows those pearly whites is a good thing. So, and it worked for her. So I would say ship it.
All right. So we got one for one. We're shipping Disney Smiles. All right. Also looking at your background, you worked at MLB. And I have 2 young sons who like to play baseball. And sometimes being the catcher is hard on an old man's knees like mine. And I saw an inflatable catcher strike zone. So you literally pump up this inflatable catcher, has a little net in the middle, and your kids or even you could throw your strikes or curveballs or sliders into its little mitt area. Would you ship it or would you skip it?
It seems like a reasonable product, because especially if you're just a kid and you're outdoors and dad's at work or mom's at work and you gotta, or your dad has bad knees. But I will say this, if you're really trying to develop a pitcher, the thing that gets me about this product that I think is maybe going to set the wrong expectation is strike zone, because any fan of baseball knows that the strike zone can be all over the place. So you kind of need that moving strike zone that you have to adjust to. So I would say it's probably an okay product, but if you're going to add strike zone to the name, like you got to really give me a strike zone, make that thing move.
The last one, you worked at Shelter. It's an off-Broadway theater company, and we've been doing this podcast for a while. Could you see a product manager musical in your future?
My initial reaction, and I'm going to get over my initial reaction, which is like, who wants to know about product managers? But obviously there's people listening to this podcast that do. But look, if you can, well, I'll tell you this. I remember walking down the streets of New York. I used to live in New York, and seeing the ads for a play called Hamilton. And I was like, who the heck wants to see a musical about a dead president? And I was just like, man, this thing is going to bomb. Little did I know. So look, if you can take a well-known but not top of the line in terms of knowledge around the world president and make a billion-dollar musical out of it, I think you can make it out of anything. So let's go for it. Let's ship it.
Let's go for it. Yeah,
but Lin-Manuel needs to be writing the music. That's my only requirement.
That might be the secret there. We got to get him involved. We got to try out. We'll work on our singing. But if he's writing the music, he'll make it really work. All right, so it's I guess it's a ship it with a couple caveats. We'll go with
We need to know who the creative team is, but let's go. Yeah.
Well, very good. Nice. Dave, thanks for playing.
Let's jump right into PM Power Moves.
Powering up. Power Move.
So this is where we kind of dig into the product management practice, what's top of mind, and from your perspective, innovation, streaming. What are some of the things that you've been thinking about in that area in your capacity?
That's a good question because, and speaking about streaming, but also kind of expanding that to a broader product audience. One of the things that you see in streaming now, or that you'll hear from people in the industry, is a question of whether it's becoming commoditized. Like, is it just easy to set up this distribution network where there's some common UX frameworks, there's understood technology, there's maybe hurdles for people to scale that, and there's opportunities for improvement, but where can you really innovate? And I think that's a dilemma that a lot of the big players are facing today. But I think when you think about innovation, whether it's streaming or otherwise, something that has always worked for me, and something that I think is also important for us to do, whether we're product managers or not, just as citizens of the world, is to think about who are the people that are underserved. Because a lot of times a great product or an innovation was understanding an unmet need that other people were ignoring. For entertainment, for streaming, you can think about, there's probably this bell curve of users, right? There's a core set of users that are best served by the products that are out there. They have the right devices. They're able to use those devices. They're able to enjoy the full context of the entertainment that's being presented. And so for them, it's great. And any little improvement is special, but is not necessarily going to be innovative. But at Disney, one of the things that was interesting, and why I say, like, who are the people that are unmet? Who are the people with needs that other people are ignoring? One group of people that we realized we were underserving, and I think the entire industry is underserving, is deaf and hard of hearing, because deaf and hard of hearing constitute about 20% of the global population, according to the WHO, the World Health Organization. About 5% of those people have disabling hearing loss, meaning they can't hear under a reasonable decibel level, or you might classify some of those people or all of them as deaf, right? So it is disabling to their lifestyle. It's a little bit different in the US, just because of medical advancements and luxury of people who have the ability to spend towards their medical bills. So you might see that drop to about 18% and 3% relatively. But 18% of the population is massive. If you told me that 1 in 5 of my users has a need that we're not meeting, I would say we've got to do something about it. Now, when you think about entertainment, how do we today try to service those consumers? Usually it's subtitling. We'll provide a subtitle within the person's language, saying what the characters or the actors are saying, maybe some of the sounds, maybe describing music. We're doing these things. Sometimes those subtitles are great. Oftentimes they're not. So there's just that alone, just improving subtitling and doing that at scale is an important place that we look to focus. But I'll tell you a story, which is there are people out there who that's not enough. And I usually use this movie as an example because everyone's heard of it, which is Jaws. And if you remember the beginning, not everyone remembers the beginning. Someone told me the other day, they're like, Dave, Jaws starts as a rom-com. And I was like, you are lying. It starts as a horror story. There's a shark. It is vicious. And they're like, no. Go watch it again. So I watched it again. And at the beginning of Jaws, you have these group of, I don't know if they're teenagers or just overcast teenagers that are actually college students, or like 40-something people pretending to be teenagers. There's a bunch of kids on a beach, right? And there's a bonfire. It's out in Long Island. And there's this couple, and the couple are making eyes at each other. You can tell that, maybe there's a little bit of a love interest, and they both leave the party. And the girl's running first. The guy's following behind. He's so goofy. He's tripping over himself. He's trying to take his shirt off. He's telling her to wait. He's just like a buffoon, but he's funny when you watch him. And so, at this point, Jaws is a rom-com. Well, then the woman jumps in the water, and you get the iconic shot that most everyone has seen, which is down from below the water. You see her swim across, and there's this light cascading through the water. It's beautiful. It's still kind of rom-com-y. Some people in our team would joke that it looks like a Club Med commercial. Like, it's very inviting. It's like, let's go swimming. But if you have the sound on and you have the faculty of hearing, you hear 2 notes. Da-dum. And it's the slow, rising, quickening repetition of those 2 notes that starts to build the anxiety for the audience. The understanding that this is not a rom-com and there is something to dread, and I don't know what it is. I haven't seen it. If you've seen the poster, you probably know what it is, but you just don't see the monster yet. You don't see the shark. Now, eventually, visually, it catches up for everybody. You see the shark attack, right? But that attack is just the confirmation of your fears. It is not the fear itself. And so, for us, it was, how do we accomplish what Spielberg did so brilliantly, which is to start way before you see the shark and start to build that sense of anxiety and fear. And so what we tried to do is say, are there technologies out there? Are there ways to enact other senses? Can we use things like vibrations or haptics? Are there things visually we can do? Are there other technologies we haven't considered that can fill that void? Maybe not in the way sound does or in the way music does, but in a way that viscerally affects a human being. I think when you can accomplish things like that, and we did a lot of research with both deaf and hard of hearing as well as hearing enabled folks to see, did some of our ideas resonate? What you find is, people are really appreciative, and they do connect better to the stories when you are able to find ways to connect. But also in finding that for those people, that 1 in 5, what we found is that the other 4 in 5 also had a reaction that was usually positive because it was something new and novel and different, and it gave them a different way or a deeper way to experience a story. I think it's like when you can innovate from the edges, when you can think about those underserved, you'll often come up with the most brilliant and not just brilliant, but most meaningful and world-changing innovations.
And that underserved group had such a pain of missing out, right? I mean, they were kind of missing out on that whole experience. So that's why I think you said your focus group was so engaging, because you were addressing a real pain that they were having with, like, I really want to experience this movie properly, but I keep missing it, or I don't quite get it till the end. You're providing this service that then kind of addresses that pain, addresses that need. And I think, if I caught you right, at the end, you said it actually also made the product better for the other customers who are using. I think you maybe were adding new, sensory places where even someone who maybe not have a hearing compromised, it actually makes them even more excited using the product. So almost it was like you focused on that right group, but it also made the product overall even more inviting.
Yeah.
Is it just folks that have certain challenges, or is it even? I mean, your content is international; it goes into all the different countries. Are the same tricks? Do they work in every country? Like, can you just simply translate content? Can you just put some of the things you just talked about for every country, and does it work everywhere the same?
Yeah. Yes and no. I mean, I think there are certain things that translate. And I think you have to be aware and certainly test your way in and to understand what resonates with certain markets versus others, what kind of devices are more prevalent or more used in other countries, et cetera. But I also think sometimes the process needs to, beyond just the way you're thinking, we talked about innovation from the edges. I think the way you bring those different thoughts to the table changes when you're doing something like that, trying to go to multiple countries. I'll kind of pair those two stories. Are part of the way by which we discovered that there was this massive underserved audience was that we started doing what I would call building heist crews. And I call it heist crews. Like I worked at Disney, I worked in movies. Heist crews are a way of thinking about things for me, which is, if you think about your favorite heist movie, there's usually the scene where they put the team together, right? Like they know, like, look, we're going to go rob the Bellagio. There's this amount of money on this day. And if we do it, this is what the loot is, right? But then that person who has the mission, they understand this is what we got to do. They don't necessarily know how to do it. So they go and they recruit the team, and they think about all the people who might have the skills or understanding to get that done. They get the getaway driver, they get the security expert, maybe they get an acrobat, I don't know, but they get the people that they think are necessary. And then they look at those people and say, look, this is the mission. This is how important it is. This is why we have to do it on this day and in this way. And then they ask them, how, what are you going to do? What of this can you do? How are you going to do it? And they don't question them that much. They may give some feedback and say, yeah, but you said it's this security system, but in 1984 they updated it, and so it's this other system. Whatever the case may be, and that person knowingly adapts based off of their knowledge on how to take advantage of that. But ultimately, they are accountable for the outcome of their part of the mission. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, everyone splits the loot. Hopefully they're successful in the movie, right? Like you don't actually want people robbing casinos, but in the movie you do. And when they do, that everyone's happy. But I would say the reason why I bring that up is when you're approaching innovation, with looking at deaf and hard of hearing, we happen to have a heist crew of people. And one of those people happened to be around innovation in general. And we happened to have a person who was saying, hey, I have some research. You should take a look at it. I've experimented with some technology. I'd love you to test it out. And that was something that, because they saw a potential avenue that fit into how we were thinking about how Disney should innovate, where we should focus on, we said, hey, that's a great way to rob this casino. For going international, I think it becomes even more complex because you're introducing oftentimes languages that you haven't previously supported. There's different regulatory environments. There's all kinds of things to consider. There's cultural sensitivities. There may be different rating systems for content when you're talking about streaming. So there's all different types of things to consider. And so I'll tell you a story of something that really resonated with me and why I continue to double down on this idea of assembling kind of the best of the best from who you have and giving them ownership over the overall task. So we're getting ready to start our effort to go into East Asia for Disney Plus. Among the countries that we were going to launch in was Japan. And we had a language manager who was in charge of our localization around Japanese. So a language manager, typically one of their deliverables out of the gate is what I would call, I don't know if everyone would call this, but is a language Bible. And think of it almost as like a brand Bible, but combined with how do you talk about this brand? How do you talk about certain features, like say a watch list in this language? And they create that so that when linguists and translators go through and localize the UI or localize marketing materials, they're all abiding by that same kind of central language and brand Bible. But what this gentleman did was he went a step further. Is he happened to not just speak Japanese. He was originally from Japan, had lived quite a number of years in Japan. And he put together product insights for the product management team. I happened to, at the time, oversee both a large amount of product managers as well as our international team, including localization. So it just kind of made do that we brought all these people to the table. But otherwise, I think I should have been doing that anyways. But he comes and he brought, say, to our search team this insight that in Japanese, there's 3 different forms of writing or structures of systems of writing. Think of it, this is not the best articulation of it, but for an English speaker, think of it as almost like 3 different alphabets. By the way, there's also a Romanized version of Japanese, which uses Western characters to spell Japanese words. But within those 3 character-based writing systems, it is what we learned through this gentleman was it is completely natural, normal, and expected that when you're doing a search query, you might combine characters from all three systems. What that means is that a simple query, say something like Snow White, very, very short title, might have, and I forget the exact number, but say 8 or 9 different variations. And when you think about search is all about indexing. It's about algorithms. It's about predictive models. And you're trying to guess off of those first few characters what someone is typing and get that first result up there that's accurate. That accuracy becomes really difficult when you have all these variants that are possible. Had we not involved him early on, or had someone said, look, you're not part of the product team or you're not part of the engineering team, we're not going to invite you to this meeting, or, hey, that's a nice thing you wrote up, we'll look at it eventually, we would not have had the runway to do the thing that would have been considered table stakes in Japan, and certainly with Japanese speakers around the world. I think when you're approaching things, whether it's you're trying to bring out something to a global audience or you're trying to bring something out to an underserved audience, is thinking about who are the people who know things that I don't, and honoring what they know. Don't let labels get in the way. And certainly I've seen a lot of product managers fail and get themselves in kind of hard situations because they feel this pressure to know all the things, to set all the requirements, to set the direction for where things are going. And sometimes I would say superpowers that a product manager can have. One is you think about the heist team is knowing that mission, knowing which casino we're robbing and why. But the other is really knowing the organization. It's really going out and meeting people who maybe you don't even know if you should meet within your organization, getting to know them, understanding what they bring to the table, even if they aren't people that you normally work with and are outside of your org structure, aren't normally paired with you, et cetera. And getting to know them, keeping that contact, sharing ideas occasionally with them and seeing how they react. Look, that's a lot harder in today's society when we have a lot of remote work and a lot of hybrid work. You don't have the water cooler moments, but I think it's important to do that. That will help you in these types of situations, whether it's international or innovation or otherwise.
So it's really all about including folks that are experts, delegating, and then having a diverse team so that you can get these different viewpoints and validations. Make sure you haven't missed anything, particularly when going into either a new audience or it looks like a new geography, but I'm sure in any new domain, however it might be, seems like a key insight here.
And I see like Dave, you're saying like the PM is kind of like that linchpin in all of this, right? They're articulating the mission, they're getting the rest of the organization aligned, they're getting the customers aligned, they're kind of assembling the team. We've seen our successful are the ones who can be very cross-functional and bring all of the the energies and the insights that everyone else has and to guide towards that mission and accomplish that heist you mentioned before.
Which brings up a really good question of innovation, broadly speaking, right? We tend to think of innovative thinkers coming out of startups, right? Because they definitely have a mission. It's do or die, so to speak. But how does one innovate at a larger company where there's already preset success criteria, right? Is there some things that you've gleaned when working for larger companies like Disney, MLB, et cetera, and maybe others that make sense? Like, how does one drive that innovation, that conviction that people then want to make certain bets and actually carry through?
And good question. I think it's interesting when you look at a company like Disney or MLB, some of the companies you mentioned, as well as really any large company that's had success. Oftentimes there is some level of innovation that was just organic. That's how they got there, right? Like Disney, if it weren't for Walt Disney and his innovations and the people that he brought along and their innovations, it wouldn't be a company that's still here 100 years later and producing what it does today. But like any large company, you get into moments of that innovator's dilemma where the thing is working and it's driving revenue and it's driving growth and it's doing all the things you want it to do for the business. And so there's a question of how much do we just scale this and improve it and optimize it? How much do we reduce cost so that we can improve our margins? And in doing that, you effectively start to take your eye off of what should we do next? Where do we find that next area of thought and innovation and creativity and growth? Because you're putting so many resources towards maintaining that thing that is successful for you today. By the way, that was part of the product advanced innovation team. Part of what we saw our remit was helping our team, at least within Disney streaming, understand what were the things that might be keeping us from taking certain bets. Was it our understanding or lack of understanding of the risk? Was it our lack of understanding of the reward? Was it the emergent technology, the lack of market? What were the things that kept us at bay or made us move slowly in terms of moving to pursue that? And understanding that those are all, whatever those reasons were legitimate and probably had a counter argument as to why we should operate the way we did. And that's what we found. Like there was never something where we said, that makes no sense, you guys are crazy. It was just like, yep, I get it. Okay, now how do we overcome this? One of the things that I would talk about, obviously I talk in stories and I talk in metaphors. I live in Texas. Football is big here. My wife went to University of Texas. Go Horns, hook 'em horns. She'll love that. But the thing I love about football and why I think it's a great analogy for innovation, for helping large companies get over that innovator's dilemma, is an idea that I like to call first downs before touchdowns. And the idea is when you think about football, and what I think is beautiful about football is that while everyone knows the goal is to make a touchdown, to get that ball 100 yards, get it, get it over get it into the end zone and score a touchdown, is that really the goal at any moment is to get 10 more yards. It's to get a first down, because if you can get that first down, you are able to keep the ball and you can continue to move the ball forward. So I say that because a lot of times innovation, there are obstacles. There are things where maybe you aren't ready to sink enough resources into something because that's going to be too big of a bet, too big of a risk. It may be that you don't have an understanding of the technology. It may be that you don't have enough signal from the market in terms of, is this thing going to succeed? So whatever the case is just saying, well, what can I do now? What's something small I can do now that can help me answer those questions or help me build conviction within the organization? Now, that may be for something that's larger, more innovative, again, emerging technologies where you do something like develop a prototype and you just start to fish that around the organization, maybe bring it to consumers, but you build something that maybe doesn't have all the plumbing, doesn't require all the engineering teams, is low cost. And if you get enough signal out of that, then go seek funding for the next phase, which is maybe just a little bit better prototype. But I also think of a story. I remember someone on my team who came to us with a great idea around how we wanted to help people discover content. And it was brilliantly thought. There was a lot of data, a lot of understanding of the consumer that was built into the proposal. And then we said, hey, let's go do this. We'll clear the road. We'll start to prioritize this. It wasn't that we weren't willing to take the risk. We were ready to go all in. And then the person came back and said, I don't know how to get things done here. Like I've tried, this one team's ready, but there's 3 or 4 other teams I need. And they're telling me that they've got 10 other priorities coming from other places. And I just don't know how we're going to get all these people together at the right time and get everyone aligned so we can move forward. And the thinking that we brought to the table is like, well, you said there's one team that's available. What can they do? And even if it's not perfect, even if there's some smoke and mirrors there, let's at least see if we can start working with that team on something material, and let's build that out. And once we build that out, then let's start engaging with other teams as they come back online and have some capacity and get into their stream and get into their priority list, get into their sprints so that we can start to do these other parts. And hopefully by working with that one team, we'll kind of smoke out some of the issues that we didn't know we had or learn something so that we're not wasting everyone's time and having to re-engineer this whole thing, 6 months into the development process.
Yeah, Dave, I love that. I mean, me and Lucas kind of have a $10, 10-minute kind of prototype view of things. Now with inflation is probably more than $10, but you get the idea that you box it in to be very kind of light and then showcase a quick win. And you showcase that quick win, it just builds momentum. And when you try to tackle something so big and so large, it never tends to launch. There's always like, wow, what about this? And then you kind of slowly get there. And then, but you have those quick wins and you show those prototypes, you show those, iteration on it. You get people excited. That one team, like you said, was leading it, go, well, I'm going to be part of that. That sounds fun. And then I want to be part of that. So it almost kind of, gets the group aligned to that mission even faster.
Yeah. The snowball effect. Yeah.
Exactly. That's what I was about to say. Yeah. You got to get momentum. You just got to keep the ball moving down the field. It's one of those things, like I remember, we're in a political year, but I remember, Obama, when he was leaving office and he said something to his staff about, it's just, you got to make the world a little bit better each day. And that really stuck with me. And I think that that's something, you don't have to be president of the United States and the free world to think that way. You can just say as a product manager, okay, how can I make the world just a little bit better today? And if I can do that, then I'm going to celebrate that. And by the way, I'm going to celebrate everyone who's a part of that. And we're going to feel great. And hopefully one other person is going to say, I want to feel like that. I want to be a part of that. What are you guys doing? Can I join the party? And that's how you build momentum. Yeah.
Yeah. That's amazing. Wonderful.
Well, I think that was a great conversation with Dave. And we're actually together because this is our season finale until next time. But we wanted a little thoughts of what we thought of the conversation with Dave. again, I thought it was a great conversation. I liked that, even the thing, I actually watched Jaws over the weekend
Oh, is that right?
just to get to see, was it a romantic comedy if I turned the sound off? And at first it kind of is a little jokey because it does feel like a rom-com. If you didn't hear the music, you wouldn't be scared.
It's
And
a bit of a surprise.
and that ties to how he built diverse teams because he brings in those different mindsets into there. And so that's why he was able to find, I guess, like what he was talking about, underserved markets where they wouldn't enjoy that movie of Jaws because they would think, oh, I don't understand why it's scary until, of course, attack. But it is important to make sure you think of that. And there was a user group that was missing out on a lot of things and a lot of good value from the product because of that. And they were able to actually make better experiences. I think even it made comments about VR was being added to it. So from those underserved users, he was actually making the product even better for everyone to enjoy. So I thought that was a great conversation. Would you think?
Yeah, absolutely. So let me just add to that. Again, I feel like there's tremendous benefit when you go to those markets because it tends to actually benefit others as well in the main market, right? And there's certain things you can get out of that. So I agreed with that. The other thing I think that I took away it was his whole thing. Like think of it, your project as a heist movie.
Yeah,
right. And but like don't steal, but like think of it that way.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the main takeaway was really to bring a diverse team together where the different players have strengths of where they play, and you can then lean on those experts for the different things, thus making your entire team stronger, and thus the sum of the parts is actually the end result is bigger than the sum of the parts. So I think is the way that looks like. So
yeah.
So I really like that point, and I completely agree. It's amazing. I mean, we see that in PM, right? Like management doesn't actually build the product. Where the magic happens is in the simplest way. You have your tech lead and a product manager come together, and it's that business savvy with the technical, right? That together gives you the best product possible in the simplest use case. So I really like that. It was great to hear from Dave that going into a different geography like Japan, right, and how that worked for him when you have such a diverse. So those were really our takeaways. Really enjoyed the conversation with Dave. I hope you did as well. And I hope you enjoyed all the episodes of Can I Speak to Your Product Manager that we brought to you this season. Again, subscribe to the podcast and hopefully we'll see you and you get to hear more episodes in the future.